Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the world of Jonathan Edwards and his contemporaries. So let's get started. If we're to first look at the works of Jonathan Edwards, namely A Divine and Supernatural Light, we begin to see the influence that many of the people he read from, studied from, or otherwise interacted with played a great deal into his ultimate theology. One instance is Sir Isaac Newton. What may be surprising is the degree to which he is concerned with cultural developments occurring beyond the bounds of Christendom. He has much to say regarding heathen peoples and their relationship to the redemptive plan of God. He writes also of the arts and sciences in Western culture and concerns himself with topics that seem to have little bearing on theology, such as natural philosophy by Sir Isaac Newton. Cultural developments, Edwards seems to suggest, form an integral part of God's plan for history. So why do I incorporate this if it's not really involved with theology? Because he would have used this work as more of a critical source rather than at face value, because it's not necessarily the information he would use in a sermon, but rather a disputable bit of information for him to base more of an apologetical refutation on. If we're to look at another instance in Edwards' knowledge bank, we find one of the greatest commentator authors ever presented. As a pastor, I still to this day use one myself. Another popular annotator of the Bible, whose writings Edwards knew well, was Matthew Henry, a prominent spokesman for English nonconformity. Edwards would have been quite a studier. According to Oxford scholarship, New England pastors recognized the need to search the scriptures regularly and test their understanding of doctrines by becoming avid readers in order to ensure that they conveyed orthodoxy to their congregations. Other contemporaries would have been people such as his grandfather, Solomon Stoddard, or his father, Timothy Edwards, or Moses Lohman, Matthew Poole, Matthew Henry, Humphrey Prideaux, Arthur Bedford, Lawrence Eckerd, Nathaniel Lardner, John Fox, Archibald Bower, John Willison, or even John Erskine. He quoted some of the people listed above in several of his works. For instance, Edwards quoted the Acts and Monuments written by John Fox in the earliest section of the Apocalypse, or we know them as the Apocalyptic writings. Another that was quoted was Matthew Poole. Matthew Poole was a 17th century exegete that was a biblical annotator whose massive tomes were highly prized by New England divines, including Edwards. Although these are only a few, it seems that no matter who would have been considered a contemporary during this time, Jonathan Edwards looked at their views and referenced them back to what God's Word says. And if it didn't line up, it wasn't a viable source. But even in his critique of the sources that he did use and was influenced by, he was still about lining everything up that he did and that he read with the truth of the Bible.